Well, the Croatian representation on the stream here is off the charts tonight. Ante in the Knights jumper, Joey in the Dandy City Hajduk beanie. Nick, I think we missed the memo, mate.
No, I certainly did. Unfortunately, I know this might, ruffle a few feathers, but I actually don't have any Crow merch. I might need to start doing some investment, guys.
Absolutely have to.
Hold on. Actually, hold on. One sec.
Uh-oh. Joey's fetching more props in the opening minute of the stream. Maybe we can hide the clock for the first 8 minutes like the A-League did with the Perth Glory Adelaide game tonight. How are you, Ante?
Dobro večer svima. Nije mi je bilo zadovoljstvo ove utakmice gledati, ali jebi ga, nastavit ćemo. Hey! G'day, Joseph!
Full kit wanker. Joey Lynch, how are you, mate? You're decked out now.
I am. I have gone full kit wanker. I have gone full Crow for tonight's podcast in honor of. I can't be one up by Ante. If he wears a hoodie, I'll wear the retro Melbourne Croatia top. It's a very nice top.
I one-upping because one-upmanship is, something I can do every now and then. I watch the A-Liga men's on Croatian sport channel, and I must say the commentary is bloody great. They're even talking about the national second division. These guys are like these guys probably do more research than some people who are on the Paramount broadcast.
Well, I suppose the clobber is in honour of Mark Redan's Sydney Derby win.
No, it's just because we lost on Friday night. So, like in good times and bad, I support my club.
All right, let's get cracking with the R-Liga content because we've got heaps of games to get through amid one postponed one. City 2, Glory 2. Who was there for this one?
Oh, was that?
Pressbox boys, take it away.
I'm happy to go first. I think watching Melbourne City, what is wrong with Melbourne City's defence? That has to be the question coming out of this one. Patrick Kisnorbo is just insistent that it is moments, but at this point now, I think they're the second worst defence on a goals per game ratio in the A Liga men's. They've easily got, no, they're not, because then MacArthur got thumped the night afterwards, but they've got the best attack in the A Liga men's, but they've also got one of the worst defences. And though their game was cancelled today because of postponed because of inclement weather, it appears as though Tom Glover is copping the blame for this. He was set to be dropped for Matt Sutton, who feels like he's been around forever, yet he's still on a bloody scholarship contract. It feels like he's been a backup at Victorian City for like 50 years now. But Sutton was going to start, which, like, Glover hasn't been outstanding. Glover hasn't been good this season. But watching City get ripped...
Has he been deserving of a dropping?
Yeah, watching City get ripped apart in transition at times this season. I don't think he's the one that you can just make the sacrificial lamb in this City side. I don't think he's the root cause of all their issues, Nick Dabano.
Yeah, look, when I saw the team sheet today, I was shocked. Not going to lie, very shocked to see that Tom Glover was the scapegoat. I think pretty sure from memory they were going with the same back four that played against Perth that got literally torn to shreds in transition, which we have seen. It wasn't just against Perth. We've seen this all season. And even going back into last season, I mentioned this early in the year that at the end of last season, there were some warning signs, even despite the fact they won the grand final. In some of those games towards the end of the season, they were quite open at the back. They were conceding a few goals and there were a couple of scares there. I just don't think dropping Tom Glover is the answer to that. I don't think he was the worst one against Perth Glory. I thought for the first goal, yes, he was in a bit of no man's land. The timid shot, good shot on goal, obviously, it just stung in off the palms. But I just think, when you think about his body of work and you compare it with Matthew Sutton, has Matthew Sutton done enough to displace Tom Glover when you think about all that Tom Glover's done ever since he's arrived at Melbourne City? He's been, I think, one of the better goalkeepers in this league. for quite some time. So I thought that was quite harsh. But just in terms of the way City played against Perth, like it was just a really disappointing game. And, I think, going 2-0 up, they looked like they had the games on their own terms. I think it looked like they were going to blow them out of the water. And the second they went 2-0 up, they conceded straight away. And it seems like they just stopped. And the last few minutes, they started peppering. Jamo was bombing down the left flank, almost trying to take the game on by himself. But then you look at some of the changes that Patrick Kisnorbo made when the game's on the line, and you think, are you going for the point or are you going for the win? Bringing Taras Gamulka on when the game's 2-2 with 10 minutes to go to try and find the win, to almost try and stabilise things after you've switched from playing the 4-3-3 to a 4-4-2. You've brought Kolakovsky on, you've gone a bit more attacking, and then changing that when it's working and you see it working in a 4-4-2. I just thought that was quite baffling. So some of these decisions being made by Melbourne City during that game and also going into this game, I thought were just quite puzzling. And you even look at the starting 11 today, Taras Gamulka and Aidan O'Neill starting together. Once Aidan O'Neill's back in the team, displacing Roston Griffiths, that, you're playing two of the same players. We've clamoured so much about how Adelaide start, one day and Isaias in the same team. This is very, very similar. Playing 2 6s in the same lineup, it's just not very conducive. So, look, I've clamoured for Manuel Pucciarelli all season. I've lost faith. It's not happening, guys. Whoever's left on the bandwagon, I call out to you like I am legend sort of stuff right now. Whoever's out there, give me an SOS, please. And even poor Savasa Endo, we've barely seen him as well, when maybe he would have been a better option in that game too, to try and just offer something a little bit different.
Joey?
I think I just wanted to go back to what Patrick Isnorbo said post-game, because I've looked up the exact quotes now. That's football sometimes. I thought we were great, and in those glory goals, we had a couple of lapses in concentration and got punished. And as I said, he's talked about lapses in concentration now for a lot of these games, but 23 goals in 16 games, it's not just lapses in concentration. There's something else going on. And Kisnorbo's never actually going to tell us what he is thinking in these post-game press conferences. I have long resigned myself to the fact that...
That's your opinion, Joey. You don't know. He might open up.
No, that's not my opinion. Oh, God, no. But I've long resigned myself to getting very little of value out of those press conferences. It's just basically a slightly more talkative brick wall. But surely there has to be some sort of internal recognition that just structurally something isn't working there. They're giving up 20.
We spoke about this. Sorry. We spoke about this after the Western Sydney game, and I think it's always been apparent that City don't actually know what they're good at or what they're best at, and they confuse the ability to win games in moments as an idea of function, given how much of the ball they have. Imagine being Taras Gamulka on Thursday night and seeing Roston Griffiths start ahead of you. And then today, if he was to play, he would have played with Aidan O'Neill, which, you play Gamulka and O'Neill together. I think it was the Western United game that they played together. And they weren't very good. And given that body of evidence, Kisnorbo's inability to adjust to that, but more so his inability to adjust, is his pandering to the older players in the dressing room. I think that's quite apparent now. And it informs decision-making. And I don't know, it's just something... Well, I'm very much on the outside looking in here, but I think it's something that's quite apparent. And it's something that manifests on the pitch. That might just be my opinion, man. Shut the bleep up, Donnie. But I think it's something that manifests on the pitch.
Go, Joe.
We've spoken about this hierarchy, but I'm not sure if it's optimal from a standpoint of decision making.
It's I think my frustration with City, and I know we got some feedback during the week that we're too hard on City and we don't see anything good. Like,
Doesn't matter. That guy's not listening anymore, so we don't
yeah,
have to...
but my problem with City, I hold City to a higher standard than most of the other A-League clubs because of the talent that they've got assembled in that squad. Yeah, the resources and the talent they've got. They should, bit of both. They should be winning this league easily.
They should be shitting it in. They shouldn't just be winning the league. They should be shitting it in.
Yeah, like they should be killing this league. Like it shouldn't even be. They shouldn't be neck and neck with Western United for the league in this league. They've got the ability to streak this league. They've got the ability the PFA should be able to go up to the APL and say competitive balance. City's won the league for the past 10 years.
You look at it this way. You look at it this way. How fitting that the most capable, let's say, set up in the A-League financially is the one that pays the most to the strongest and fastest players, and that has the most of the ball. Like they're the P&P ultimate team in the R Liga, and that's where they divert their funds, and then it's suddenly not understanding why they don't function with the ball, or why there's not just why they don't function with the ball, because there is at least a relative functioning on the ball in comparison to other teams in the La Liga. But how come there's such a volatile relationship between attack and defense? And that's the issue. And it's not like City score goals from, opening teams up. They don't really open teams up. They score their second goal.
Their second goal against Glory came after about 10 minutes of sustained possession.
It comes from counters on counters. So let's say it's a territorial thing, not necessarily a positional thing, where they'll score their goals. They'll have a team pinned in their own half. The other team will try to get out. Then they'll win the ball back, and then they'll pounce from there. Or it'll be cross spamming, or it'll be a dead ball, or it'll just be a straight transition. And it's counter to. It's not necessarily counter to. It's an indirect consequence of how much of the ball they have. It's a pressure thing, and this is quote unquote the most capable team in the league financially. It's kind of nuts, but kind of fitting at the same time.
But Ante, don't you see that this is actually a good thing for the league? Because the reason that the Premier League has been basically a foregone conclusion in 4 out of the last 5 years is because the most well-resourced team is also the most well-optimized team. And if that was the case in the A-League, then we may as well fold the whole competition, because there's no one's ever going to win. Else is ever going to win it again.
But that's kind of the thing when we were talking about, let's say, the hashtag box office Jets last week. It's this matter of resources and maximizing what you have. When it comes to Melbourne City, they're nowhere near maximizing it. However much, people around the club would like to, make themselves feel and sound and seem important, they're not doing a good job, quite simply. Considering the disparity and considering the financial disparity between them and a lot of other teams in the league, the regular season really shouldn't be an argument or a state of conjecture.
Nick, you want to jump in on this?
It's almost a bit of a question that I just want to pose to you guys, and we've spoken about this game. It's like the watershed game of City season thus far, but is it really any surprise that their best game in terms of building up and midfield composition and everything was that 3-1 against the Mariners, where they played Connor Metcalf as a 6. They decided to play Tilio and Berengay as 2 10s and go for it and look to play on the front foot a little bit more. But in terms of, just as a holistic thing, Joey, we've obviously been going to we've basically been to every City home game this season. But these midweek Melbourne City games are becoming hard to watch. Just in terms of an atmosphere point of view, I know that City have to cram games in for the Asian Champions League right now, and they're doing it out of necessity, not necessarily out of the fact that in an ideal set of circumstances, this wouldn't be happening. But my God, these games just feel dead. And it's felt like that the last few weeks. And again, it just felt like that again on Wednesday night. And we're getting that again this week against MacArthur. And
Oh, that's going to be fun.
what's that going to be like? So
I'm intrigued to see. I'm intrigued to see the Asian Champions League.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing Melbourne City play in the Asian Champions League because, like I said, I probably rate Melbourne City's players slightly more than you do, Ante. Call it naivety on my part, but I do. However, yeah, I do hold them to a high standard. I to be honest, I don't think I hold them to a high standard. I hold them to a standard that they themselves say, project that they should be held to as the biggest and the best and the most well-resourced and the most well-run side in Australian football. And at the moment, they are I don't see that in their regular season play. I don't see them reaching the levels they themselves aspire to. And my next, that's disappointing. We want all of our clubs playing as well as they possibly could because get good, basically. I can't believe I used that in an on-the-record interview with an Australian football executive this week, but I did. I'm really interested to see them playing in the Asian Champions League because effectively, since he's taken over at Melbourne City, Patrick Kisnorbo has played. Nick Stoll's making fun of my accent again in the chat. Since he has taken over, since he has taken over as the boss of Melbourne City, Patrick Kisnorbo has played precisely one game against unfamiliar opposition, South Melbourne in the FFA Cup. Every other game he has played in a competitive setup has been against familiar opposition. Now he is going into Asia. He's going up against different styles, different players, and I want to see how he and Melbourne City react to that because I think that will go a long way in telling us whether or not this Melbourne City team is a good team or just a good A-Leagues team.
Nick?
And one thing to remember as well, PK needs to rotate because it's literally impossible to play 6 games and play the same starting 11 in 2.5 weeks. So
However,
is he going to rotate? He has to. This is not because he's got players missing. He needs to. Otherwise, his players are going to be cooked when they come back for finals.
But the question is, who does he rotate with? And that's, when you look at things like Jamison and Galloway playing as wingers, it doesn't speak a lot. It doesn't speak very well in the faith in City's attacking stocks. And it's not just a Pucciarelli. It's not just a Trelakovsky. There are players in their youth setup who could see minutes this season in games that, in the grand scheme of an A-League season, processions. Yeah, especially given how much they have stockpiled talent in Victoria, over the past 2 to 3 years, or even going further than that. The players who are given responsibility in absence of those in the first team who usually get that responsibility doesn't speak a lot for City's ability to adjust.
Well, I personally, from a crowd perspective, given them a wide berth for the midweek fixtures because that's universal across the league. Time and time again, the Australian football public has shown they have little to no interest in attending a midweek game. And the Asian Champions League might be a priority for the club, but I don't know how much of a priority it necessarily is for the fans. On the field, it might be a little bit more interesting, but I'm not expecting to see the attendances kick up off it. Maybe novelty value will play a part. But
guys, maybe Manuel Pucciarelli is their Jai Ingham. He's the Asian Champions League specialist, and he's just been, saved in a freezer. And they're gonna,
specialist.
they're gonna thaw him over time, unfreeze him, and then he's gonna be ready for the Champions League, and he's gonna blitz them all. Who knows? Maybe that's been the plan all along.
We're all asking, where's Pucci?
Nick, I've got some bad news for you, my Italian
I
friend.
know what you're going to say. I just remembered. The foreigner rule.
If there's anybody that's going to be that, it's going to be Endo, the Asian player they have signed specifically for the ACL.
Nick remembers.
Just Pucciarelli, just Like, stop trying to make Poochie happen. It's not going to happen.
All right. Well, we spent altogether too much time on this game, so let's move on to
Far too much
the
time.
glorious glory homecoming that we just saw. Perth Glory 1, Adelaide United 2.
Wow, what a
Despite
game.
a late penalty consolation goal for Bruno Fornaroli, it is Adelaide who walk away with 3 points, a towering back post header that Tim Cahill might have been proud of from Ibasuki. And then goalkeeping error / Toure brothers' heritage goal from Mo, beating a goalkeeper at the near post. It's the family move, apparently. But Ante, you were particularly disappointed with the quality on display in this game, despite a reasonably healthy crowd at HBF Park.
Oh, God. Imagine being a Perth fan and watching that. Not having seen your team live for, the first time in over 3 months. And that's the 11 Garcia rolls out for that game.
Well, yeah, speaking of playing fullbacks on the wing.
Yeah. And, playing a fullback up front and Nick Fitzgerald as well.
That's harsh.
He's nothing more than that. But yeah, I still believe, irrespective of what the ladder says, Perth are the worst team in the league, and Garcia exacerbates that. But like we have mentioned on other episodes, it doesn't matter because Daniel Sturridge is injured, and whether Daniel Sturridge plays or doesn't is more important than whether, Collie and Steins are having a job share at the moment, or whether, let's say Fitzgerald is taking away minutes from other players who can. Like Nyongabira is a worthwhile starter in that team. Whether Clisby should be playing at left wing, like this all. None of it matters, but it all matters when it comes to Perth Glory because it speaks to, I guess, how they view themselves and how they view success, how they have viewed success. Because this was something that was apparent under Kenny Lowe. Like they could play like dog shit, finish 6th, and the season's hunky dory. Like this is not exactly a new development, and how reliant they were on Diego Castro has now been transferred onto Bruno Fornaroli. Like it's bordering on comical how frustrated he gets with his teammates on a weekly basis. That was actually the interesting thing about Steins losing it at Fornaroli today, where Fornaroli could have passed to Steins, opted to hold or let's say hesitate and shoot, and Steins gets a little frustrated with him. That was an interesting little moment there. That, may speak to how the dynamic is at training.
Well, in spite of that, I do credit Bruno Fornaroli for channeling all of his frustration into the power on that penalty and just getting the right amount of rebound so that he was able to easily claim it as it bounced off the back of the net and back out to him so he could make the quick dash back to the center circle.
Let me just clarify, however, Adelaide were not much better. These were two very poor teams playing very poor football. And the worst thing about this game was the Craig Goodwin goals assist stat pad at the end of the first half. Like, Aspro Potomatis, completely leaves Ibuski free with a free run at the back post after the pushing and shoving that was happening only 20 seconds beforehand. Completely gets lost, body shape all out of whack. And we were saying during the group chat, because Aspro Potomatis has to scramble, it allows Ibuski the ability to leverage and kind of get the header over him. It was just bad football, but the goal at the end of the half kind of changes the complexion and changes the dynamic of the game. We probably would have seen more of what we saw in the first half if it remained at 0-0. And it'd be crazy to see what Viet's adjustments would have been with that in mind.
I'm probably going to be the lone dissenting voice here, but I actually think that was a foul from Ibusuki. He's
No.
on both of his shoulders
Yeah,
and
no.
basically flattens him. Like, he can't jump. You can't jump if somebody is literally already jumping
because
and
he's
holding
just-
his shoulders down.
As per
can't
He
contest the
folded
ball.
like a cheap suit. He folded like a cheap
He's-
suit.
Well, you would too if Ibusuki landed on top of it.
No, but we'll look. I think it comes down to leverage, and when
Yeah,
a defender
leverage
is
with
scrambling,
his hands on
no,
his
no, no,
shoulders.
no, 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 like
Literal leverage.
I understand what you mean, but I think because the defender's scrambling in that respect, the or any smart attacker should be using that against the defender, and I think that's kind of what happened there to a marginal degree, and possibly massaging or bending the rules. What creates that situation is, as per Potami's, just letting Ibusuki get the jump on him.
Well, the bright sparks off the bench for Adelaide were the likes of Moture and Nestor Irankunda. Joey, you were impressed with their performances?
Well, I was, and I think my problem is that, as you said it, off the bench. One of my things with this, like, Adelaide has won. They are now up to third on the table. Ibusuki has scored another goal.
Good player, Bart.
Yeah, but it's just like when I watch Adelaide, I'm like sitting there, I'm just watching them run out these lineups, and I'm like, I know Toure is coming back from injury. Yeah, like Blackwood is
10.
I'm like
insane, man.
I'm like watching Adelaide, and I'm like, just please start, Louis Dorigo. Why isn't Louis Dorigo getting minutes pumped into him so he can become your latest propaganda? Look at the players we develop and sell piece. Like Moture, this club should be going out of its way to be getting as many minutes into Moture as possible so they can sell him overseas, not be placing barriers in his path in Ibusuki. And I'm aware I've just completely ripped off one of Ante's articles when I made that point, but it's a point that needs made again and again and again. Like even guys like Nestori Irankunda, I know he's young, but I'd love to see more of even Joe Coletti, for God's sakes. Like I'd much rather be seeing this club living the values that it professes to have as this incubator of young talent, rather than, going conservative with these lineups of Blackwood as a 10, Isaias and Wande and.
But after
Ibusuki.
after the MacArthur game, that another example, after the MacArthur game that Dorigo is never going to start in midfield for the rest of the season unless there's an injury, because results. And now,
It's the same thing with Denis Jonro. Ollie Roos loses the trust of Arnold, never seen in the Socceroo setup again.
Mm-hmm.
This is an official Denis Jonro propaganda podcast, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all know that.
Uber Eats made Denis Jonro. Wasn't in the other league, mate.
When he's putting Lionel Messi in his pocket next season, we'd have told you that.
Uber Eats made.
Well, if I may run some propaganda for another young player that I like, do you guys remember Johnny Yull, who made his debut last year?
Didn't he score a banger in the NPL?
Yes.
That's what I was about to bring up. He scored one of the best goals you're ever likely to see. Do yourself a favour and go watch it. For Adelaide United's youth or their NPL side, spots the keeper just off his line from well inside his own half. He's like halfway inside his own half. So 3/4 of the pitch, he launches it over the goalkeeper's head and in. It's just ridiculous.
It's actually
I'm hoping that's enough to get the coach's attention again, because he made his debut a year ago and he only turned 16 yesterday, I think.
That's actually a good shout, given the overt.
Happy birthday to Johnny Yull.
Yeah, it's actually a good shout, given the overt similarity that Adelaide has in its midfield. And now with Mork gone, they don't really have a 10 outside of Clough. So someone like Johnny Yull could actually suit if you manage his minutes correctly. But I don't really have faith in Adelaide doing that. So,
just a question to you guys: if Cassini Yengi never got injured, would Ibusuki have been signed?
No.
And would we see potentially, a bit more rotation between Yengi and Toure, or would you see Yengi being that out and out number 9 certified?
Yengi would just be pushed because Yengi would just be pushed because even though Toure was not exactly he was injured at early stages of the season. I think Yengi would be pushed because he is seen as a quote unquote target man, and Viet doesn't see that in Toure. Even though it's not like the idea that Adelaide need a target man is more symptomatic of issues deeper on the pitch. I don't see Toure.
And they were playing a number 10
being
with
a lone 9 up front. Exactly.
They were playing a number 10 with a build of a centre back. So I actually think that's one of my secret, like, Ben Simmons shoots with the wrong hand kind of takes, is that George Blackwood is actually a ball playing centre half and he just doesn't know it.
I mean, they got Jacob Trapp.
Hey, have you
he's
seen
got the build of a truck.
Have you seen George Blackwood juggle the ball and do little skills in warm-ups? He's mad if he's got time.
Hey, and teams of the R-League don't press, so hey, let's do it. Man.
That's what I'm saying. Put him in centre back. Cook.
Hey, bro, so Blackwood has the build of a centre back, and Jacob Trapp has the build of a truck. So, I guess it can work.
Jacob Truck.
What's a truck?
All right, I think that's enough. Of this great! Another edit point for me. Victory 3, MacArthur 1. I think we'll move on to. I didn't see a great deal of this one because I was commentating the real football at the grassroots Lakeside Stadium. But Victory get the win on the board that they sorely needed after a pretty sharp dip post FFA Cup final win. Although it seemed like, to me, MacArthur, from watching the highlights, handed it to them on a silver platter.
MacArthur were honking. MacArthur was honking in this game. I mean, the first goal, like me and Nick were talking about it after the game, as soon as Orr drops back, you can see the gears turning in Rojas's mind. Rojas knows exactly what is about to happen. It happens. Press, bang, Shushnia shits himself. Bang, 1-0 victory. I mean, you could see it coming from a mile away. And it didn't get any better for MacArthur. I mean, on the plus side, as opposed to most coaches that attempt to gaslight us post-game, Ante Milicic at least came out and just said, yeah, we were second best. We were nowhere near it. So that was at least one positive that I was taking from that game. I wasn't gaslit in the post-game press conference about how MacArthur dominated but just didn't win the game.
We just weren't ruthless enough in front of goal. That's usually the go-to from our Liga men's coaches. We just weren't ruthless in front of goal, even though you played like absolute dog shit for the majority of the match.
You know what's funny, Ante? Tony Popovich said that exact same line about his own team.
We just got to be more ruthless
enough. But in fairness,
you could have 85 fucking minutes of the match. Sorry, whoa, fuck it upsets me so much, man. You have two teams in the R-League playing in U-shape, not creating anything of actual substance. You get half chances at best in open play, and then it's like, oh, we weren't ruthless. You know how I feel about insulting one's intelligence, and that's what we get from the R-League men's coaches, for the most part in this league. Sorry, Nick, continue.
No. I was just going to say, by the weight of half chances or chances, I mean, the XG actually wasn't that high. They probably should have scored a couple more goals. They probably should have at least, because MacArthur's defense was an open book. They were leaking like a sieve. They were being moved all over the place by Victory's front line, which, to be honest, Victory haven't done a hell of a lot of this season in terms of actually building up. And if Victory are doing that, there's something not right? So in terms of that, what Ante Milicic went with from the start, you knew he was setting it up for failure. I know they have a few players out, but the 11 was wrong from the start. Some of the decisions of starting Liam Rose at fullback, etc. You can go on all day about. We've seen it all season about the strange positional and decision-making from Milicic in terms of his starting 11s. But, I mean, for Victory, look, it's 2 wins in a row. They've got games in hand. I mean, it was probably one of their better performances this season because in reality, they haven't really played that good this year. And they probably haven't played that well since maybe, I don't know, the game against Brisbane or Western United earlier this season when, they popped 3 in the back of the net. But I just thought it was also interesting that Ben Falami benched for this game and they finally went with the Economides Rojas partnership, which I think it's a surprise that's taken. It's a surprise it's taken this long because you would have thought that would have been nailed on, despite how well Ben Falami's been playing. You would have thought straight away the second we get Economides and Rojas on the pitch together from the start, that's a nailed on conclusion there. But and the good thing was to see. I mean, no more. We haven't heard what Australian victory player next is going to be the bolter, and why is it Nick D'Agostino if he scores again next week?
Oh wait, I thought it was Jake Brimmer.
I thought it was Mats Baranovic.
Hashtag bolter. For me, I think Jake Brimmer is the hashtag bolter. Understanding like if we really try to understand our Liga brains, like. Oh, he just looks so good. He's just got that. He's just real quality. He's got got great distribution. Yeah, I think I'm not going to go further. I think it's Brumo who's going to be the hashtag bolter.
I'm just surprised D'Agostino's name hasn't been thrown for because he scored so many goals. And when someone scores a lot of goals, it means great things. It's like Ibasuki. So I'm just surprised.
And Craig Woodward.
I'm going to
Why
disagree
would Arnie pick
with
a
you
victory player if he doesn't have to?
No. I'm going to
Why?
I'm going to
There's
disagree
no
with
way he's being a
Ante
victory player.
on Brimmer being the bolter purely because of one thing: tenure. Who is already played in the Olyroos and scored important goals for the Olyroos and scored important goals for Graham Arnold?
Okay.
Daggers.
Okay.
So
The
that's
long
why
throw
I
specialist.
think the Rory Delap of Australia.
If only he
I
could
totally
throw-
forgot about his long throws.
You
if only
could
he
put
could throw
it.
it high enough and long enough that he could run onto his own long throw without that. being
No. He'll put it on the head of.
Mr. Perfect in that vignette.
He'll put it on the head of Jay Rich Begaloo from 30 yards.
Goodness.
I mean, sure, he's fine, D'Agostino. He's a wrecking ball. He's an energy player. He works hard.
Came in like a wrecking ball.
Literally. But, his goal was gifted to victory. That wasn't as a result of the press. That was a result of midfielders and centre-backs.
Both of them, Josh.
I'm talking about his opening
goals,
goal. I'm talking about his opening goal. Was a gift because Orr and Shusniar's positioning was insane. And they played themselves into a cul-de-sac, and then for some reason, instead of just if in doubt kicking it out, Shusniar tried the risky pass back, and they literally handed a one-on-one to D'Agostino on a silver platter. So he doesn't usually create anything outside of capitalizing on errors and moments in transition where he's first into the box and can slam his head or his foot on the end of a cross.
Hey, don't forget Kellever's assist early in the season. By the way,
that's true.
Great assist.
Kellever, that's a good segue. Actually,
We're going to talk about Kellever.
Speaking about Ivan Kellever assists, he threw one in just to make it interesting in this one, Joey.
Man, we've disagreed about. If I am Matt Acton now, I have no idea what the hell is going. Yeah, I am putting in the transfer request. What exactly is Matt Acton not doing in training, or to still not start at this point? I know we. It feels like that whenever Kellever can produce great saves. We've seen him produce a few this season already. But there's an existential sense of dread that comes over you whenever the ball goes near him. Is this going to be the moment in the game where we get our regular brain fade that either costs victory a goal or sends palpitations through their entire fan base? I get that he's, party and he jumps around, but especially for a foreign goalkeeper, especially for someone that you're using a visa slot on, he's bang average to below average in a Liga men's.
Look at it.
Joe,
Look at
the
it this
pennies
way.
dropped.
Imagine-
The pennies dropped for Victory
Yeah.
fans months ago. On that one.
Imagine being
the good vibes have worn off long ago amongst the Victory fans. Like everyone knows
Well,
he's
welcome to the
honeymoon's
party,
over.
pal.
Honeymoon's over.
We're stuck with him. You know.
Like the thing is, like, all right, Bulic is never going to see senior football. I think we can safely say that.
Well, not in the A League.
Well, yeah, like senior football, he won't see senior football in the A League. I think that's
Good
pretty
luck,
safe.
young lad. If you're watching this, if you're watching the pod, well,
Like, I think there's like a long enough body of evidence to suggest that it won't happen. However, however much I like him on a personal level and how he approaches football, but Bulic won't play. They brought in Kelleher. They brought in Jared Tyson, and Acton is collecting dust essentially. Imagine being a good keeper at NPL level in Victoria and one who's seen minutes. Big Mike's had to go to Newcastle. There are other keepers out there who are capable, and one that I know of who's only just turned 21 and has had to get out of an A-League system, and it's insane how little faith we show young keepers, who, especially considering keepers have the longest shelf life out of any footballer and out of any footballing position. Looking at how Victory have gone about their goalkeeper stocks this season doesn't say a lot if you're a young goalkeeper in this state.
Just a small point on Matt Acton. I mean, last season he got brought in when Max Crocombe was letting in goals for fun every single week. And I thought Matt Acton, despite the defence that was in front of him, and we remember that defence last season. We talk about sieves. That was beyond the sieve. That was the dam completely being blown open every single week. Matt Acton, I thought, held himself really well at the end of the season last year. He made some big saves. He put in some okay performances, at least enough to potentially warrant maybe being in conversations to be the number one, especially when you compare him with Ivan Kelleher's performances. And, we spoke about it before the start of the season. Kelleher hasn't played a lot of football in the last 9 years since he left Innermore. He hasn't played more than, I think, 20 games at one club. So it was a bit of a baffling signing at the time. I know he's got the good vibes. I know that the fans, they love him for it. But I just think in a big game, like you're thinking about when it gets to finals, you want to have safe hands between the sticks. And we remember Victory when they last won an A-League trophy, what happened when they had Lawrence Thomas between the sticks and how sure he was and how he bailed them out with his face all bandaged up. That's the sort of guy you want between the sticks. And I don't know, unless Ivan Kelleher can really turn things around in the next few weeks, I just don't know whether he's going to be able to see out the whole season between the sticks.
I mean, I think it's just a matter of, when the form dip is timed for him, because we all know Victory's going to finish in the 6 and they're not going to challenge for the Premier's play. So it's a matter of, can he hold it together for 3 or 4 weeks? And, that's the question. Does it cost Victory in a big game? Which there's every chance that it does. I would be looking to make those proactive moves, Nick, but I don't necessarily think that Popovic is looking to do that. Not after they've turned the corner and won this game. No, nothing further. All right, let's move on then.
No, all good.
I'll just reiterate it. MacArthur were bad.
Yeah, well,
missing a whole bunch of players, as Ante Milicic told us post game, but bad.
Yeah.
Well, let's
be curious to see him on Wednesday night. Very curious to see him on Wednesday night. How they respond.
Well, let's head to Ballarat for Western United 2, Newcastle Jets 1.
Speaking of gaslighting.
The double from Leo Lacroix at centre-back, strengthening his Johnny Warren medal case, as we were talking about last week. Is he the front runner now, Joey?
Don't ask John Aloisi. Bloke absolutely refused to give me any sort of quote on that thing when I asked him. Just going through and he's deflecting to try to claim that Rene Kirin is as much of a set-piece threat as Leo Lacroix in the box. And I'm just, no. Yes, Leo continues to be impressive for Western United. Finally gets a couple of goals to his name. I think he'd been threatening for them from a set piece for a while now. Gets up there, continues to be the type of defender that catches the eye, bolstering his case for a rare defender, winning the Johnny Warren medal.
What about his defending, though?
I mean, Western United have a superb defensive record. He's part of that defence.
But when they were actually made to work in that second half, can Western United actually put 90 minutes together for once?
Hey, it doesn't matter.
Well, they're top of the table.
No. Like I look at it this way. Like it's. I watch them and lament over the state of the A-League. Like the fact is, like as dramatic as that might sound, it's like they're gonna score, they're gonna go up, they're gonna defend, they're gonna say, "Hey, you can attack us." That was very different to what was said of Aloisi when he was first hired by Western United. Because if memory serves me correctly, it was said that they were going to play really attacking football. They were going to be very progressive.
Let me look up his announcement.
No need to look it up. That's what was said.
I'm going to fact check you.
All right, fact check me. Like I'm CNN, man. Go for it.
Ante's got the receipt.
No, we can wait. Let's go.
Here.
All right, hold on. Here's the announcement. Australian football icon John Aloisi joins Western United as head coach. Thrilled. Recruitment process. Someone reflects the values, desire. John will build on the foundation, hard work, yada, yada, yada. I'm privileged to coach. Doesn't say anything about his playing style in the official announcement, but I'll keep digging around. I'll keep looking around. All right, you can stop waiting for me to check now.
You don't remember the 10 News broadcast when it was announced.
While the research goes on in the background.
I don't watch Channel 10 News, Ante. Unless I'm on it, I don't watch Channel 10 News.
Free to TV either.
I mean,
they
Ante,
play
every coach does
league.
that. Every victory coach does that famously. You know, and European football is littered with teams that play incredibly prosaic football.
Look, I have no issues with it.
You just said you were
don't try to gaslight. Don't try to gaslight.
You do have an issue with it, clearly.
No. It's not the fact that they play that way, but it's the fact that they play that way and then try to tell the public something else. Because I think that's quite evident now. He keeps bringing it up in press conferences now that, you guys make it out as though we play really pragmatic football. Oh, we scored 2 goals this week. You scored 2 goals from set pieces that were absolute gifts. Like, come on now. And then
I have found an article from Original Ballers declaring Western United may be the most exciting team in the A-League.
No, but I think it's quite clear that how their success ultimately depends on whether the opposition can actually attack and whether the opposition can function with the ball. So if they're willing to go on and win the league on unforced errors, it's not saying a lot for the quality of the league, to be honest.
I mean, it's not saying a lot about the quality of the league, but at the end of the day, Ante, as we know, it's all about results. That's what everyone looks at. They look at shiny points at the end of it. I know it makes you sigh, but that's just, unfortunately, that's how it works in a results-based business. And I mean, they're winning. I know yesterday they were tested in the second half, especially in the last half an hour when, Newcastle went to the back three and, brought the likes of Bumal and Eli Babal, etc. on, and they really looked to try and be a bit more progressive. And to be honest, they were quite unlucky that they didn't at least get a point out of that game. But this month is going to be an interesting month for Western United. They're winning, but there are some big games for Western United. I know Sydney FC are out of form, but they got Sydney next week, and we saw what happened against Sydney FC last time. They might have won 1-0, but for 45 minutes in that first half, it was all Sydney FC. What's going to happen when they go on the road on Friday night? They got Melbourne City after that as well. They got a game against Melbourne Victory, who are the only team that Western United haven't beaten this season. So there are some games.
Sorry, let me provide the quote. from Western United Director of Football, Steve Horvath.
Told you
He
had the
wants to
receipts.
play. He wants to play an attacking brand of football, and we brought players like Alessandro Diamanti to this league, and we love attacking, open, free-flowing football. Why has Jamie Young made the most saves in the league so far this season? With the
Okay. That is a lie.
Yeah,
that is a lie.
That's a lie.
Well,
and it's fine, and it's fine that they play that way because I think it's quite clear. And something I mentioned going back to previous episodes, the players have no issue playing this way. They love playing for John Aloisi. That's fine. Stop lying to the public about it, especially if you're a club that's trying to build an engagement with a growing fan base. Hi, Nick. Nice of you to join us.
Ladies and gentlemen, a hungover Nick Stoll post Mardi Gras. Welcome to the stream.
Look, I thought I was in a bad mood because I'm quite hungover. Thought I was lacking a bit of optimism today.
Try watching 5 R-Liga games this weekend, mate. Or sorry, 6.
Just on a different level today. Just like, Western United. Oh, what's going on with them? What did Aloisi say in the first round? Like, boom, boom, boom. And then what does it say about the quality of the league? Man, look, there's not a lot to say about the quality of the league at the moment. But yeah, I just thought I needed to come on and lift some spirits.
No, I make this point because we're playing Japan at the end of the month. And this will come back into discussion. Because this is the shit that we accept on a weekly basis. And this is the shit that we're like that when it happens on that weekly basis, it's not the time and the place for it. When we play against Japan, when we play against Saudi Arabia, when we're on the brink of getting eliminated from World Cup qualification, it's here. This is why. Not what happens with Graham Arnold's selections. This is why it happens. All the decision making that goes into R-Liga games on a weekly basis, that ultimately feeds into the Socceroos. And this is the problem that we've had for years now. And we haven't been willing to examine it. We haven't been willing to investigate it. Nobody even has the capacity to fucking look at it, let alone actually have the balls to go out and ask those questions. Fuck me. What are we doing? Sorry.
Watching you have a breakdown on every topic.
This is an all-time high for Isuzu Ute Ante brain moments.
Take the piss or you
came out with that.
It's all we can do to cope, Ante. But having said that, the ability to actually defend is the difference between Western United, who are top of the league, and the Newcastle Jets, box office as they are, being 8th. So
but also
Western United have the highest budget in the league.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's their fault necessarily. Newcastle doing a lot with what they have, but you look at the just basic defensive errors they make on a week-to-week basis, such as Yerman giving away an entirely needless turnover that leads to the corner that leads to Lacroix's goal, and from on that corner, Jordan Elsey just completely losing his man. There's just there are just massive differences in regards to the defensive performances, and I think Leo Lacroix, to come back to the original topic, is a big part of why Western United can play this way and can win and might win the league.
And I can't remember if it came up when the Jets were 1-0 down or at 0-0, but Elsey also had should have scored for the Jets from a corner. A corner's come over to the back post, and he's kind of fallen over. Yeah, as it's come
with an empty net as well. Goalkeeper comes out.
Empty net. I can't remember if it was 0-0 or Western were up 1-0 at the time, but the game completely changes.
I thought it was 0-0.
I thought it was 1-0 already.
Let's have a look. Let's do a quick check.
It was 1-0 already.
I think it was
no more research. No more waiting.
You know what? The bubble chance at the end was it. It was after that where it was it's insane that it was much like the Wanderers game. It's insane that Western United were in a position to win. They were essentially 2-0 up, game in their pocket, and could have let those 3 points slip.
Okay.
So
why? Because
31st minute. Yeah.
Aloisi.
Sorry?
Go on then.
Are we talking about Matildad?
Aloisi. No, can I defend Aloisi?
Start going.
All right. So Aloisi takes over Western United, who were pretty atrocious last season, let's be honest. Takes over Western United, and he was told by the board or whatever that they wanted a top 2 finish.
Top 2
And
expectations.
when I heard top 2 for that team, I was like, no chance. And you know what? He's got him there. Do I like watching Western United play? No. do their fans like watching them play? I don't know. But look,
I like watching Western United play because I have found an ability to barrack for the yarn in any situation. So I just barrack for them to win 1-0.
Thoughts a yard. That's the way you're going to have it. When you're falling on the whistle, you need a barrack for the yard. You don't care about the way they play. You need the yard.
You barrack for 3-0 at half time.
But look, I guess my point is, like, I don't think the obligation is on Western United, who are having success with this style. I think the obligation is on the teams that need to beat them.
Yeah, like I have to agree 1,000% with Stoll on that. My point has always been on this thing.
I agree too.
I knew we could.
Like we can all talk. We can all talk about the need for
come and bring everyone together.
Like the you bastard. We can all talk about the.
What's the word before? Standard.
Stuff. Come on,
I'm being bullied.
I'm being bullied. Finish.
We can all talk about how we want to see the league's quality improve and about how coaches gaslight us and yada yada yada. Ultimately, the only way the league improves is if the clubs, the coaches, make the league improve. That's
and the only way that happens is if there's consequences for poor performance.
Yeah, like Western United is going to keep playing the exact same way that Western United play until somebody makes them change. For the exact same reason that we will now likely see change at Sydney FC for the first time in over half a decade, simply because the league is making them change. They have finally been put in a position where they have to reassess and change something. They're not doing it proactively, they're doing it reactively. And that's what all of these conversations is coming down to. Until clubs become proactive with their play rather than reactive, we're going to keep having these conversations.
It's not even a matter of, proactivity or, reactiveness. It's just flexibility. Like we have decision makers who are quite evidently inflexible in their decision making, both on and off the pitch. And because you have this warped idea or warped perception of success in this league, and quite frankly, a hyping of mid, they're not going to be forced to change.
Dabana, I know you got something, but I wanted to come in quickly because I mean,
go, Josh.
You think of this from Aloisi's perspective. He's been sacked at Melbourne Heart. He's been sacked at Brisbane Roar. This is essentially his last chance to make it as an A-League head coach. He had to wait in the wilderness for a long time to get this job. Melbourne Victory fans were so against him getting the Victory job that the club panicked and hired Brebner instead, and we all saw how that went. So he has every right to take a risk-averse approach initially in order to keep that job, because this is his last crack at the gig. And from speaking to some of the Western United players, I honestly think this team has surprised themselves with how successful they've been. They
realize they're not playing that well.
No, but they just kept winning, and the morale has built around this group, and now they're on a run. And you hit on you see so many head coaches who never change a winning lineup. Aloisi's still on something that just keeps working, and as long as we're basically sitting here doing the Jesse Pinkman meme and screaming, he can't keep getting away with this, then they're gonna keep doing it.
Well, for example, I remember the Sydney FC team under Ante. One year when I think they nearly went undefeated, but the Wanderers beat them in one game. I remember saying, yeah, they're unbeatable and unwatchable. It was awful, that Sydney team. And look, Arnie's gone on to have, in A-League terms, a successful career. National team coach, won trophies. So I think it's up to...
He's made a whole bunch of kids millionaires.
Millionaires!
That's true, exactly.
Millionaires!
It's up to someone like... I don't know. It'd be interesting to see Arthur Pappas with a better budget, and what he does, and if he then can defeat it.
Yes. No. Look,
I'm
in
muting
terms of
Ante
in
while he
terms of
recovers.
Western, yeah, no. In terms of Western United, I think the one thing I want to see going forward is two things. One, they've got a few key players out at the moment. So once Diamante and Connor Payne come back, how that they shift the gears. I mean, they've got a lot of midfield depth. They haven't played Diamante and Krin together from the start. And to be honest, I know Rene Krin has been coming in. It's taken a bit of time for him, but he hasn't really, set the world alight. He just keeps things ticking over. He's very steady. He hit some passes yesterday that were a bit okay, like just calm things down, mate. Like you're trying a bit of the spectacular. But moving Dia into the 10 role, does that affect Lustica, who's had a really, good season? He's been hitting the scoreboard from midfield. Does it impact Dylan Parish when Connor Payne comes back? Dylan Parish has also had quite a decent run in the team. So the other thing as well is I wanted to mention, there you go. One last thing. I want to see what happens when Western United actually go down in a game, because they haven't really been down early, bar maybe the Melbourne victory and Wellington games. And that first Melbourne victory game, that was a late winner from Miranda. But the Boxing Day game and the Wellington game were the two examples of when they were behind and what John Aloisi does in terms of actually looking to change the game. Does he have a plan B? Because we've seen the defensive, what he does when he's defending a lead. I'd like to see what he does when he's attacking the deficit. What changes he makes? Does he go a bit more attacking? Does he look to maybe try something different? I mean, at the start of the year, when Dylan Wenzel-Hawes was playing well, there were sometimes questions saying, well, can you play Wenzel-Hawes and Prijovic together? Well, Wenzel-Hawes has barely seen a minute for the last few weeks. Is he going to go to that? Is he going to go? Sorry, just finish this off. Is he going to look at guys like giving, Adisu Bayo, again yesterday, electric off the bench yesterday. Very unlucky he didn't score. Are we going to see Christian Theoharis, for God's sake? We've barely even seen him play. We see him in a tracksuit every week. Is he going to get some minutes? So what are those changes going to be? How is it going to be when he's coming up against a team when he goes behind early? Because it just seems like if you don't hit him early, they're going to get you eventually, and then the game's done. It's been like that the entire season. So will the handbrake come off in that instance? I mean, it has to.
All right. Last in this topic all around. I'm ringing the bell at the bar. Last orders, please.
Only 1 point on Crookin. In the same way that Prijovic had to kind of find some kind of match sharpness, that's a similar point with Crookin. He's clearly not sharp and not in a frame of mind that speaks to continuity. Yeah, he hasn't seen a lot of football, and that's the same thing with Prijovic. Prijovic was massively underdone at the start of the season, and I think that was evident, and that's why Aloisi was more inclined to start Wenzel-Hawes, early in the season, because they could maintain a relative defensive shape, especially with Diamante. That does help to a certain degree that they don't have to play both Diamante and Prijovic, but I'd be intrigued to see what happens when you have them both together.
Speaking of Diamante, Stoll.
Is Diamante finished? Is Diamante
still playing in the He's playing in the A-Liga by definition, like he's washed.
I know he's not. I don't mean is he, but if you think about it, he was very good in his first season in the A-League. He was, I think, less effective in his second season, and the negatives that he brings that the team has to change around him was much more evident last season. And then this season, you talk about it's a winning team, and how do they bring him back? I'm not, he's got 10 games, he's no goals, 1 assist this season. His negatives, I think there's a lot that he slows the play down. He's a great ambassador, he's a great character. I really like that. I just think from a football perspective, is he still, if you were just looking at it cold, should he still be starting in this team?
Dia needs to be moved, in my opinion, into a sort of, if we're going to use NBA basketball terms, into more of a 6-man veteran role off the bench. That is his role from now, because in terms of, not entirely that just yet, but in terms of, the intangible positive impact he has on the locker room, you can't take that out of the team. I think that's still there. I know that he's not as quick as he used to be. I remember him, Ante, I remember seeing him years ago in Serie A playing for Italy. The guy had wheels. He could take on players. Even when he first came here, he had that bit of skill. This year, he's picking passes first touch from halfway. He's trying to catch the keeper off guard. I think that maybe it might be time for him to take up that role where he's taking more of an off-field sort of stance, because, I saw him, he went to bloody Ballarat yesterday on the bus with them. He's there. He's with them each step of the way. Point ball, 50-50. It's always excitement with him. So, and the players obviously feed off that. He's great around the locker room. So you need that.
like
So I reckon off the bench,
to use a wrestling reference. Sorry, to use a wrestling reference, let's get him on the mid card and show the young guys the ropes.
He needs to put guys over now.
No,
honestly, this is now his time to put guys over. Like, this is probably the best role for him.
Go out
Maybe
on
playing
his back.
20 minutes off the bench. 20 minutes off the bench might be the best role for him in a big game. Maybe it isn't a role as a starter. I remember, Ante, we said it. I remember you said this point once, actually resonated with me, about how it's like in football, it's like basketball. You have a starting 11 and you have your finishing 11. It's like in basketball, your best 5 that start is not necessarily the 5 that you're going to finish with in a crunch game. So maybe he is in that last 20 minutes when you need a goal, and you need a bit of magic. Maybe he is that answer instead of playing a full 90 and he's gassed by the time it reaches the 70th minute. And you get 20 minutes of the best Diamante you possibly can.
I'm going to say the Diamante story is not over, because have you tried clicking through those stories? They're never over. Just going forever.
50-50.
Oh, well,
A lot of one.
Joey, last point.
Yeah, before we move on, and I'd like to thank Nick DeBarno, the captain of the Western United press box, for taking me through that point of view.
What's a Lucy?
One thing I'm just going to repeat the point here that I made surrounding Adelaide United, but now just using it with Western United. Going forward, I just, like we're talking about, when's Christian Theoharis is going to get minutes? When's Luke Giselle going to get minutes? When's Dalibor Markovic going to get minutes? When's Ben Collins going to get minutes? When's Bayu going to...
He was this close. He was this close.
When's Bayu going to get more minutes? Because I'm looking at this team right now. Their average age so far this season, Western United, it's 30.7. In probably the most physically taxing A Liga men's season that we are ever going to get. At some point, unless we see a managed rotation from this squad, and we do start seeing maybe some of these younger players being given more minutes, there has to be a risk that the wheels will just fall off, just because some of these, more veteran players with more miles on the legs will collapse.
In many ways, that's the dilemma that Rodan faced in his first season in charge, when he had the, Dad's army.
Bubble worked for him.
Yeah,
Bubble worked for him. He was able to bring in guys like Lustica. From it was the Adelaide game coming into the bubble. He had Lustica Pasquale in midfield, was very different to Yertets and Kone in that first season in midfield, and that kind of rejuvenated them.
Yeah, I mean, he had to make big adjustments though. So for the team that ended the season for them and was actually playing quite well, like the team that started the year.
Josh, I asked you not to ring the bell just yet because you mentioned thing about the age of 30. Just one last tiny little point, all right? Just looking at contracts. I mean,
yes, Captain.
They got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players coming out of contract who are 30 years old, and they are Diamante, Kilkenny, Topper Stanley, Rene Crin, and Leo Lacroix. How many of those players get a new deal for next season? Maybe Leo Lacroix is 30, like 30 on the gap. And maybe, if Dia wants to stick around for Poi Ball vibes and he's going to take a bench role.
No,
the others, are they going
to take off? So I don't think he's going to be playing football. All right.
I mean, he said on a certain class he's signing a new deal, so it's already done.
Central Coast Mariners 2, Brisbane 1. Warren Moon's season going from bad to worse. But that goal...
Maybe he is secretly a shit bloke. Who knows?
That's a reference to last week, if you didn't listen, just to be clear. But Benny Nkulolo's goal, and particularly the Cumdog assist, that just blew my socks off.
Say it, Ante.
The Cumdog. He can play. He's the big bad Cumdog. That was. It picked up in the second half. The most interesting thing about this game was Moon going back to 3 at the back with Aldred returning. But then, as a consequence, putting O'Shea and Daly in his midfield. And leaving Steinman on the bench, and Steinman Agbari is probably his best midfield combination. But I've got I've got something in mind on Brisbane, so I don't want to give too much away. But that was very interesting to see how Moon adjusted to Aldred coming back. Watch this space, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they're having a terrible campaign, Brisbane. The results just aren't coming. And my early season, or pre-season, I should say, enthusiasm for the Raw looks thoroughly unfounded at this point. But I found it interesting that the Mariners went with Dan Hall at right back, as opposed to
With
bringing
Tonic back,
Storm Roo into the starting lineup. It seemed a little odd to me. I mean, yes, Miller was out, but
Tongic's back.
Yeah, but I don't think that's
Tonic had been benched, hadn't he?
He'd been benched
Tonic's
for
starting.
some weeks, and
Yeah.
I don't know whether he's fit or not. But like Hall Rolls is clearly the best centre back partnership they have. It was a bit weird.
Hall was dribbling up the pitch with no problems, man.
Yeah, I
No,
didn't
I
mind
mean-
him. He's throwing step over the box. Like, I kind of saw it and was like, hey, we can go
Hey,
with Dani Alves, guys.
Hey,
Are you
to the
buying
moon,
Hall
to the
stock?
moon.
Is the question.
To the moon.
Absolutely. No, we all know I'm big on Dan
Hall at
Hall.
right
no,
back stock?
listen, stall.
But I
Oh,
found
yeah,
him.
I'm buying
he
Hall
was
stock.
he was bailing out Tonic for his errors as well. There were a couple of last ditch efforts. So I'm not convinced that that's the best solution if they've got someone in the back line unavailable. But Birigidi continues to save the points. You see his save late on. I think it was from Nicholas Olsen. Was absolutely unbelievable, clawing that one out of the bottom corner. So
I tell you
Central
what,
Coast.
he wasn't happy with Tonic on Brisbane's goal when Lascano headed through. Oof.
I don't. There's not a lot. Like cutbacks are they're not exactly simple to defend.
No.
It wasn't even a cutback. Like that ball in from O'Shea was like millimeter perfect. But
And
what
quick as
happens
well.
in that scenario that allows O'Shea to put that ball in? It's like just play Steinman and Akbari together. God, like it's not difficult. Just how do you get the best out of those two? Because then you will get the best out of Brisbane.
Can I just say, I'm just so thankful the Mariners didn't cough up another game late. I just feel so sorry for them. Just good vibes. Just good guys finally get something
done
done
their
their
way. If it hadn't been for
way.
Birigidi, then they would have.
Yeah. And it's funny,
first goal,
Stole, you're talking... Yeah, go on, Ante.
Oh, go for it. No. Just that first goal. Like the idea of Ureña allowing them to get up the pitch and then the Camdell like providing the assist, like that strike partnership is really, really fun to watch because they're really varied and they cover a lot of bases in what they provide Central Coast. It's really cool to watch them.
I have a theory, by the way, on how Nick Montgomery has finally arrested the Mariners' habit of giving up leads late. I think he's recited a few inspiring words that he was in the dressing room for that Neil Warnock delivered back in the day.
By all means, enjoy it.
I was actually thinking of, you got to fucking die for 3 points.
I didn't. But Moon and Montgomery look like B1 and B2 on the touchline out there. They were wearing the same clothes, basically.
I gotta say, I find this Brisbane Raw team very uninspiring. Like, they never look forward to watching them.
But from box to box, they're really good. In front of goal, they are horrible. Like Ivanovic, Miljosnic,
I wouldn't even say they're really good box to box.
No, they're like if you put them or if you set them up in the right way, they're pretty good box to box. Just in both penalty areas, they're just unreliable, and that undoes them on a weekly basis.
Stole's just laughing at your Birigidi thing about him. I think it was Stole mentioned about Birigidi losing it. You can almost copy and paste Birigidi's exact reaction to every single Mariners goal they cop because he always he sprints to the first defender who's at fault and is getting in their face every single week. It's a copy and paste reaction, but I just wanted to mention that. It just feels like
he does have the Luis Italiano shouty goalkeeper vibes.
Yeah, I personally, as when I'm playing, I hate shouty goalkeepers. Just shut up and save the thing. Like, do not. The only thing I need you to say is like, maybe just a bit of
Left shoulder,
tactical
right shoulder,
instructions. Yeah, that
basically.
kind of stuff, right? But
Yeah.
nothing else. But in saying that, if I was advising a goalkeeper, I was his agent, I'd say, look, blame someone else on every goal, because every goal you can see, people just be like, yeah, the defense stuffed up, nothing you could do. That's what you want.
And I just say there is no better feeling than scoring past a shouty goalkeeper. There is no better feeling than scoring past one in any form. It's great just popping one past one.
Hey, you know what? There's no better feeling than finishing this in under 90 minutes. So let's.
I was going to say it was an absolutely tonking header from Lezcano as well. It was very aesthetically pleasing the way it just crashed into the back of the net. But we'll move on from this game and on to the Sydney derby. That Nick Stoll, as you pointed out, was not the biggest event on in Sydney that night. Perhaps weird scheduling from our APL overlords.
I mean, I don't know. To me, look, maybe this is a very inner city, late 20s thing to say, but man, Mardi Gras is the best party in Sydney. It's the best party you're going to have all year. It's so much fun. I had so much fun last night. And I love the derby too. I love the Sydney derby. I love going. I think it's one of my favorite sporting events in Australia all year. Even despite the two team struggles at the moment and the league struggles widely. But yeah, I thought it was strange things to schedule. I don't know if that affected attendance. I saw attendance was 14,000. Now, look, there was a lot of rain, and that's an issue. And like I say, the Wanderers are struggling, Sydney FC is struggling, and maybe 14,000 is not too bad given the circumstances. But I think that game really probably, if there are any Corica supporters within Sydney FC, and Corica's still a man, I think there's massive doubts about him now. Just the inability to change beyond his quote unquote system, which I think's pretty. I thought it was interesting this week when they announced the Sydney Super Cup or whatever between Rangers, Celtic, and the two Sydney teams. Oh, sorry, MacArthur, but whatever, no one cares. But he was like, Ange has his way of playing, and we have our way of playing. And I was like, do you?
Bro, what are you talking about? Corica is innovative. Everyone in the league now is copying the job share tactics.
Okay. The job share,
come on now.
The job share joke is a joke based on the inability to see beyond. I have this player, and I can only replace him with this player, and that's the only thing that he can do. So, I don't know. I was
expecting you to seriously respond to that, but how can you not play Burgess in midfield? After how he's played in midfield, how do you not play him in the biggest regular season game of the year?
Yeah,
I honestly think the opinion of Sydney fans, from what I've seen, is, in the words of Troops, it's turning blood. It's turning.
It is turning.
Yeah.
Now's the time for Corica to coach. Sorry, Joey, go. But now's the time.
I was just
come for him to adjust.
I was just going to agree with Josh. From a lot of what I've seen, one of the noticeable habits I think we've all seen from Sydney FC fans is how they generally tend to back their people. They'll back Corica, they'll back Arnie with the Socceroos, they back Danny Townsend with the APL, they back their people. It's notable just the numbers that are dropping off when it comes to Corica and the amount of people expressing doubts surrounding Corica's tenure. You know the phrase, there's something wrong with the dog when it doesn't eat. There's something wrong with the Sydney fan base when they don't immediately back their guy. And that's what I'm seeing with Corica at the moment.
I mean, I guess it also comes after years and years of success. They've been top two the last 5 years.
Corica has to rebuild the squad, man. Corica has to rebuild the squad. He did a remarkable job in that respect.
No. I mean, I don't think he had to rebuild the squad at all. What are we talking about here?
He's taking the piss. He's taking the piss out of you.
Anyway, my point is, it's a rebuild job that's coming. So they're going to have to rebuild the squad at the end of this season, right? Because I think there's only 5 people who are left on contract or some crazy thing, and they're moving into this new stadium and Thank you for the research. But it's, in my opinion, it's a rebuild that's coming a year too late. And actually, when you should have been doing the rebuild is before you're moving into the new stadium, because I think they're going to struggle next season as well. So I don't know, but I've got to say, very important result for Wanderers and Rudan, because speaking of not exactly getting a lot of backing. There wasn't a huge reception from Wanderers fans, at least from what I saw, when he was given the 3-year deal. And for him to win the derby and win it, relatively convincingly, I think that's a massive kind of step in the right direction for that club and for him.
Debano?
Yeah, well, Stoll, I've crunched the numbers. They've only got a few players. Like, literally, they haven't even got a team to field next season right now.
I think it's like 5 or 6 players.
Yeah, so the only players contracted for next season and beyond are Ben Warland, Max Burgess, Connor O'Toole, Elvis Kamsova, Patrick Wood, Patrick Yazbek, Adam Lafondra, and Anthony Caceres, who actually has the longest contract into 2024. None of those other players I mentioned are contracted beyond 2022.
Leonard coming back on loan?
Well, of course, that's not. Sorry, I didn't see his name there because he's not included on transfer market in the senior squad because he's out on loan at the moment. So this is actually no Mlinaric. His name's actually here. No, he's out of contract at the end of this season. So they've got the likes of Bobo, Wilkinson, Ninkovic, Barbarousas, Redmayne, Grants, Bratton. These sort of players that are coming out of contract, and they've got to make some big decisions at the end of this season. That also includes Luciano Narsing, who debuted yesterday as well. So they've got a lot of players that they need to make, there's going to be some tough decisions that they've got to make at the end of this season in terms of who sticks around and who doesn't.
One thing is good for them is if you're doing a rebuild, you want a lot of players coming off contract because there's a few clubs that are trying to do rebuilds with long contracts and you're like, this is going to be impossible to get rid of these deadwoods. Yeah. So it'll be very interesting to see how Sydney FC approach it. But this season is really struggling. And I don't know, I just thought last night's lineup was very strange. And even the decision, for example, when Kamsova comes off to replace him with Bobo, and I don't know just how bland Sydney FC look.
They've always been bland.
Was Bratton one of the players you said was out of contract, Nick?
Yep, Luke Bratton's out of contract.
Because I could honestly see him taking a sabbatical from football and going backpacking in Peru. I mean, have you seen those cornrows? They're back.
He's going to the prison where they wrote marching powder.
He's going to go to an ayahuasca retreat. Have a mind-altering experience.
You know what? The interesting thing about Bratton is because he was one of those who whose contract was back-ended, and COVID came into play. It'd be interesting to see what kind of money he'd get elsewhere.
The other players out of contract, who's going to, I reckon, attract a lot of interest, Callum Neuvenhoff.
If he
one
can
player to certainly keep your eye on. Yeah, if you get body committee.
He's worth a risk. Another club, let's say another club should be. He'd present a calculated risk if they had a better understanding of his physical state and his capacity to stay on the pitch. Because as a midfielder, Sydney don't want another Tilio or Devlin to happen.
Absolutely.
Seen some tweets fly through here. Alan wants Joey to say staff again.
By the way, can I just say shout out to all the people who listen to this show and then take the piss out of either the whole collective show or individual members on Twitter. That's my favorite stuff. So, for example, when Dylan Murphy said, Isuzu Ute Ante Brain. Oh,
Ante Brain.
That was glorious.
I'll have to wear it.
Shout out Lockie Flanagan, who's did the El Chiringuito video.
Forza young boy, man. Forza
young. So Lockie as well.
With Ben Collins, we were this close to greatness.
Yeah. Talking about as well.
Okay, go on. Nick.
Sorry, just in terms of reading out one more fantastic tweet from our good friend Pakul Frimpong. Just tweeted a photo of Manuel Akanji. If you know, you know. That's all I'm saying. In relation to a certain other player who we've...
Yeah.
Joey, I'm taking the piss, so I may as well throw the floor to you.
Well, we're talking about rebuilds and all of that stuff about the Sydney side, but Wanderers, of course, as well, rebounds, at which point I just need to... Hold on one sec. So I have a piece coming out in The Guardian tomorrow talking about this, but of course Wanderers, the Sydney derby was of course Mark Rudan's first game in charge since having the interim tag removed from his title, and he's now the full-time Western Sydney Wanderers boss. Surface level, it's fine. He's probably the most competent coach they've had since Tony Popovich. He's going to improve the team. But you have to go back to the line in the press release announcing his appointment. Letter is saying he has been handed total control of the football department.
Mm-hmm.
The Wanderers doing it again. They are looking for their latest messiah. And it doesn't matter if it goes well for Rudes. It doesn't matter if it goes poorly for Rudes. At some point, Rudes is going to leave. And unless the almost unthinkable happens and Rudes has suddenly planted a coaching tree and has disciples coming out of his ass that can take over and continue his vision at that club, Western Sydney Wanderers will be left back at ground zero again. What is the overarching plan at that club? What is the overall, what is their long-term strategy that will survive players coming and going, that will survive coaches and going right now? Because it seems to be that their latest plan to return to the promised land, and I'm stealing directly from my article here, is just to borrow Mark Rudan's. Like, they don't have one of their own. They're just going to borrow Mark Rudan's and hope for the best. And the biggest example I can provide for this mindset isn't actually their men's program at all. It's their women's program, who again, they've finished second bottom of the A-League women's again. Contrast that with the top four sides that have finished in the A-League women's this year. Sydney FC, Melbourne City, Adelaide United, and Melbourne Victory. What links those four sides?
Money.
Investment, but investment not just in money, but also they have at least some idea at the club what they want their women's program to be. They have people there. They might not have a lot of people. Basically, Melbourne Victory's women's department for the best part of years has basically just been the department of Jeff Hopkins. But they've at least...
So what you're saying, Joey, is it comes down to the staff.
Joey's trying to make a serious point. He's getting the piss taken out of him by his accent. However, the point stands that the point stands that Rudan's hiring, and whether he goes or not doesn't change the root or the core problem at Western Sydney.
Basically, I've made this point. I'm giving away the money line in the piece. Western Sydney Wanderers.
Don't do it. Stop.
No,
right,
it's
fine.
okay. No one cares about the money line.
I care about the money line. I want to read it.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'm not going to give it away, but it's the last line. It's about what Western Sydney were at their birth and what mistakes they've made based upon the circumstances of their birth and how that's going forward.
I don't know. If
Joey can't give it away because we actually have to submit the transcript of this podcast on Turnitin tomorrow, and we don't want Joey to plagiarize himself. So.
I'll just say the club was set up by Popper. The whole club was set up by Popovich, including their youth setup, and he was the one overseeing all that. He was very involved in all aspects of the club when it was first set up in those first years when he was there. And clearly, Lederer sees that as he's gone, that we had success with that. I just want to find another Popper. Rudes, be my Popper. That's it.
I think that youth program did well without Popper, man.
Yeah, but it was set up.
Nah, I'm not buying that, man.
As in, Popper went around the world.
No, there were people who came in after Popper. I don't buy that.
Is this Ian Crook Erasure?
I'm not saying that Popper did everything. I'm saying that when they were setting the thing up and how we're going to have this club, the overall Popper's focus wasn't strictly on the men's, day to day. All right, let's just worry about the first team. His focus was the entire club, and that's what they're doing again with Rude.
So what you're saying, Stoll, is they're hoping lightning strikes twice.
Yeah,
and
even tried that 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's what I
still
guess.
Hasn't struck again.
Lederer's thinking is by giving Rudes this scope. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Debano?
I am very intrigued about the squad because, again, we had a look at Sydney's squad. Western Sydney as well also find themselves contractually wise and in terms of players coming out of deals at the end of this season. They're also quite an interesting position because they actually have a lot more players coming out of contract than maybe would have been first thought. And a lot of guys who I honestly think I wouldn't be surprised they're on the way out. So, guys like Vedran Janjetovic, James Troisi, Tomo Hamed, Bernie Abini, Dimi Petrados, Tomislav Machella, Keanu Backus as well. He was supposed to make that move overseas. He hasn't. Yep. So Rami Nazarene as well is out of contract. They've certainly got to snap him up on a long-term deal. He was. Ziggy Gordon's coming out of contract. Daniel Margush. So I'm very curious to see how many of these players are kept, because some of the guys they've got at least tied up are guys like Steven Ugarkovic, Terry Antonis, Reese Williams, and some of their younger players. So I wonder how many of those guys are kept, because I'm pretty sure, Joey, you might be able to correct me because you were in that presser for the Newcastle game, but he said a line about, the players or something about, coming along for the journey or something along that line. I'm trying to get the exact quote.
Read my piece tomorrow. It's in there.
Coming back to that game, that was
no. Actually, I think I cut that out. He basically said, shape up or ship out. Don't give a shit what your name is. I'm not going to take anybody here that just wants to take a paycheck.
Don't care anymore.
We're not taking the piss out of you, Joey.
Just any joking English.
You got the job on a technicality. You're a fool.
Just any joke now based around English accents, I just take as a personal attack.
That Andy Tate Sydney FC meme that someone made last night. I forgot which account it was. Shout out to whoever made that, because that was absolutely bang on. Who got the Andy Tate impersonation on?
But coming back to that game last night, that was actually the interesting thing about Nazarene, Ogawa, and Ugarkovic all starting. Suddenly, Western Sydney looked relatively competent on the ball, and even though they weren't the active team in possession, they were still able to, make the most of their possession. Whereas Sydney were the opposite.
It's because Rami Nazarene is a baller, and I will.
He can play. He can play. Just just show faith in him, man. Show faith.
Speaking of Nazarene, he's the one who won the penalty, which drew a lot of ire, both on the broadcast and on Twitter. I couldn't believe some of the stuff I was reading about Alex King being the worst referee in the league. This guy's like the second best.
Your boy, Alex King. You got to defend your boy.
I do, actually. I think he's one of the better officials going around. I mean, we've all seen the refereeing this season. He's one of the guys that actually tries to let it flow and pay advantage of the attacking team, which I enjoy watching the games that he refs. But Sydney fans, I guess, not used to getting the drawing the short straw in this regard. But I thought it was a penalty. Like, you can't just block off and clothesline somebody. And there was a little nibble at his shin as well. I thought it was a pen.
I think it's a pen as well.
It's a pen.
You're not allowed to put your arm on players who are running through. Like, he goes down easily, blah, blah. This is the conversation you have all the time. But you have to be extra careful in the box as well. As Real Sociedad found out last night.
Other small thing to pick up on is, did we ever get the full story about why Tommy Murchella just took a break from football for a full year before he went to India? Like, he just dropped off the face of the earth. After his Perth Glory contract expired. I don't think anyone's ever adequately explained that, but I thought he was exceptional.
There you go,
Matthew Sporanovic kind of
do that for a story.
I don't know.
Yes, maybe I should chase it myself. Do some journalism, Josh, for God's sake. Let's go on to the A-League.
Well, hold on. I just have one line. Basically, this summarises my thoughts on Western Sydney Wanderers.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is? Insanity is doing the exact same fucking thing over and over again, expecting shit to change. That is crazy.
Basically that.
Nice.
The resonant thing from that clip is that villain's name is Vars.
What is that? What was that? I've never seen that.
That's Far Cry 3.
Okay.
It's a good game. Good game.
I only play for you.
Hold on, we've got a comment. Did we see the comment on Facebook?
Oh, yeah, I did actually, and then I forgot about it because nobody uses Facebook. Matt Pappas.
Matthew does.
What's happened to Patrick Wood? It's a travesty he doesn't get any minutes lately. I know he got COVID at the end of January, and I haven't seen him since, I don't think. I'm not sure if he got injured after that, but he was out around right at the end of January with COVID. That's all I've got on that.
Yeah, I have nothing further.
No other intel.
I mean, look, I think I'd be starting him over Bobo, for example.
You should know what's going on in the Shadow Realm. I thought you had more than that for us, man.
No, not on Mardi Gras weekend.
Indeed. All right. Let's go to Matthew. Also says, now I'm embarrassed to be the only person on Facebook.
No, we love
Shout
you.
out to you,
We
man.
love you.
Only person watching on that stream.
Respect,
Let's
Matt.
go on
Respect.
to the
Tell
A
your
League
friends.
women. Actually, also, that's a good time to point out that we stream on Facebook and YouTube as well every week. If you don't like the Twitter video interface for the live streams, that's where most of us hang out. That's where we retweet it and stuff, obviously. But we do have a National Curriculum Facebook page and a YouTube channel. So check those out.
TNC football. It's
Yes.
under there as TNC football.
Yeah, the
TNC
YouTube's the best
football.
one to watch it on, in my opinion. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
YouTube's
Like
a very
a
good.
great number of things.
yeah, better than Paramount Plus, some might say.
Hey, depends what country you're in.
Shout out to the Channel 10 employee trying to gaslight me. It was my computer, and it was the issue with the video playback. Anyway, whatever.
Shout out to the nation of
This platform's
Bulgaria.
got problems, and I don't think they're going to be solved
Canada.
anytime soon, as we've covered in previous weeks. But yeah, shout outs to Canada.
I'm the
A-League
one.
Women's is coming into finals time.
You two, honestly, you just give yourselves reference that no one else understands and you just giggle at each other while Josh is trying to introduce proper stuff.
He always gets his man, Nick.
Right.
Hey, comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter if you want these two kicked out of the stream early. That would be my preference.
Let's show some
No, you can
respect,
do that
shall
for the
we,
Shadow Realm. Come on, mate.
to both your host and the A-League Women's competition, which is heading on into finals football. Sydney getting the job done for the Premier's plate, and Melbourne Victory's 0-0 draw with Canberra United, just about enough to secure their spot in the playoff places. Joey, do you want to start?
I think the Victory just pretty much sums it up. Victory was not good against Canberra. I know Jeff Hopkins was saying that he saw enough signs to give him reason for optimism heading into their game against what we now know to be Adelaide United next week. But I'm not optimistic. I mean, I'm like, if Canberra United, Michelle Heyman and Margot Rabin had been able to put just any number of one of their multitude of chances in transition anywhere other than directly at Casey DeMont, we are talking about Perth Glory being in the A-League Women's Finals right now. Victory, Canberra, and Vicky Linton basically did say after the game that whilst they always like to play in transition because it's their natural game stand, Canberra knew they were going to get chances in transition, and they executed that. So, and coming up against Adelaide, Fiona Wirtz, in the form that she's in, isn't going to just put them straight at Casey DeMont. Chelsea Dorber isn't going to put them straight at Casey DeMont. And Victory, I think, listen, it sounds perplexing, but, in discussions with an ex-panelist that I won't name out of respect for him, we're talking about it in the sense that Kyra Cooney-Cross's suspension for yellow card accumulation, as ridiculous as it sounds, might work out for Melbourne Victory without having to accommodate Kyra Cooney-Cross in that side. They might function better in possession. They might, like, Kyra Cooney-Cross, it's been an incredibly disrupted season. She's gone away to the Asian Cup as well. Kyra Cooney-Cross, if anything, if she hasn't just stayed where she was from last season, she might have gone backwards compared to where she has last season, compared to how she played last season. It just hasn't been there this season, apart from one game against Western Sydney Wanderers where she got played on the wing. But as we have already ascertained, Wanderers women's side were abject this season. It hardly counts.
Asterisk. You got to put the Wanderers tax on it.
Yeah, like, so Kayla Morrison, a big loss for them as well, obviously, that they haven't recovered from. I mean, watching Brooke Hendricks has been okay, but nowhere near comes close to replacing what Kayla Morrison brought to that team. So yeah, I see Adelaide comfortably progressing out of that first game in the semis at home. Maybe that's me just trying to hoist myself by my own petard, because I like to see the Melbourne teams do well, because that means more opportunities for me to get paid work. But yeah, it's difficult for me to see just weeks on from Adelaide doing them 3-0 in Adelaide, where the improvements for victory will have come from to overturn a 3-0 deficit. Melina Reyes coming back, if she can start, that's good. I think Melina Reyes has been a gigantic absence for them this season, just in her ability to put the ball in the back of the net. But anybody that looks you in the eyes and tells you that Adelaide aren't decent favourites for that game next week is lying to you.
Speaking of absences, I'm intrigued to see how Adelaide fare if Sasaki isn't back against Victory.
She should be back. I know you don't listen to the games with commentary. She was just a close contact. She's already tested negative. She'll be.
I was listening to this one with Teo actually, but I knew she was out for this one today. But yeah, she gives them a very different dimension. I would say. I'm not sure how they would fare without her against Victory. I think it's really tight, and it's a line ball decision.
Well, Alex Chidiac will be the best midfielder on that pitch next week. It's just... Yes.
Go listen to the Other Side of 90 podcast.
Yes, but it just hasn't clicked for Victory this season, and I just can't, regrettably, I like Jeff as a person. I like, dealing with a lot of those Victory players down here in Melbourne, but just as from an objective standpoint, it's difficult to see, especially with Sasaki coming back, it's difficult to see Adelaide not getting the win in their first ever finals game. Finally, after 14 years, finally playing in a finals campaign. But yeah, I guess, Ante, did you have anything to add on Adelaide before we look at the other game?
No, I just in terms of how they played today, looking ahead to next week, that was probably the main dynamic. Because they would be different with Sasaki playing, but I guess what that means for composition going forward, I'm not necessarily certain. But yeah, Victory are very volatile, and in any given game, there are teams that can take advantage of them, and that was seen even against teams like Brisbane this season. That was apparent, with the Victory. So yeah, I'm just really intrigued for some dub finals, because I think it's just going to be fun and volatile.
It should be fun and volatile. And I mean, on the subject of putting shots straight at the goalkeeper and changing dynamics, if Amaya puts it anywhere other than directly at Yada Wyman in that game, the entire
Sydney don't win the title.
Yeah, Sydney don't. Well, yeah. So it's
straight up, Sydney don't win the title. I don't think they come back from that position.
Yeah, so that would have been interesting. But anyway, Sydney will be facing Melbourne City in the other game. For any of our listeners that don't follow the dub, changing the finals format this year. First will play seconds, third will play fourth in the first week of the finals. Winner of first, second goes straight through to host the grand final. Loser of that game plays the winner of third versus fourth for the right to play them in the grand final. I think the NSL did that for a while as some of their finals campaigns as well.
The A-League even did it in the early seasons, but they were two-legged games. That was the only difference.
Yeah. So, obviously...
like two-legged finals.
Well, good for you next time.
I don't like finals.
Yeah, the APL would like to get this season done. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So we're not getting two-legged finals.
Yes, well, and I imagine the players would like some certainty around the dates for the end of this season and the beginning of next season as well. It would make their lives and their moves and how they have to support themselves much easier as well, but I digress. But Sydney FC getting the win today, Paige Satchel getting on the score sheet with a pretty good goal, to be honest, just swiveling, left-footed effort, a non-preferred foot. inside the far post. Good goal. They've now won back-to-back premierships. They've won 4 premierships overall. They've won more premierships in A-League women history than any other side. This win today separates them from Brisbane Roar and Canberra, who are both on 3. As we were discussing before, Sydney routinely one of the clubs in the A-League Women's that actually bother to invest time and intellectual resources into their program, and it shows. They've basically established themselves now as they get right of first refusal on any talented player in New South Wales. If you're getting an offer to play for Sydney FC in New South Wales, 9 times out of 10, the player will move there. Just look at Courtney Vine. She was with Western Sydney Wanderers until Sydney FC calling. Now she's a Matilda and she's probably going to move overseas. So hats off to them. Hats off to Ante Juric, who Ante Jukic is convinced
the
to see
best
50 of in Geelong.
I'd say the best
Sorry.
Ante J in Australian football.
I was saying, Ante, you see
Horrible.
how many Ante Juriches on the street of Geelong?
You go to a crow function, you will see 20 versions of Ante Jukic out there. Like in the same way you go like I was saying to the chat, like you go out in Geelong and you'll see 20 steel side bottoms. It's the same thing with Ante Jukic to any given crow function.
Who is
Hey, we
still
spoke about
Simon? I
AFL
actually
here.
don't know. Oh,
You bastard.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter is the answer. Joey, I would like to thank you during that segment for confirming the existence of the Melbourne soccer media mafia, openly barracking for the Melbourne teams.
I barrack for my work.
For the Melbourne papers.
If somebody called me up,
papers.
if somebody called me up and said, "Listen, we're going to fly you out and pay you X amount of money if Sydney host the grand final," you better bloody be believing I am rooting for Sydney FC next week. Like I root for the yarn, and I root for my ability to pay rent. That is what I bloody root for.
Fair.
It shouldn't be Joey's shameless plug. It should be Joey's shameless morals.
No, it should be Joey attempts to eke out a modicum of
Will write for
existence
food.
Joey will write for food, basically. Yeah. The other game, so Sydney FC, they will play Melbourne City. Melbourne City getting it done against Western Sydney Wanderers earlier today to make Sydney have to get a point against Adelaide. That should be an interesting game. But before we get, I think credit has to go to Rado Vidicic and the Melbourne City for what they've done this season. Not a lot of people actually had City playing finals football at the beginning of this season, let alone challenging. Yes, I did as well. I know, but others didn't. Let alone taking it down to the last day of the season for the premiership. Rado, and I will admit, I was slightly perturbed by what I perceived as a lack of Victorian players in what is ostensibly one of the 2 destinations for the Victorian pathway. However, I have been put in my place. They have all clicked into place. They have made it through to second place. They will play for the right to host the grand final. So fortunate me getting to cover a game. And in that sense, do I think they'll beat Sydney? No, I do not. I think Holly McNamara's absence is gigantic for Melbourne City. I think we didn't so much see it against the Jets midweek, and I'll admit I was driving back from Ballarat, so I was only able to see bits and pieces of the Wanderers game. But just watching Melbourne City go about it against Newcastle and Brisbane without Holly McNamara, there are very few players in that Melbourne City attack that don't just look to immediately bounce the ball the second it's played into.
No one wants to lock it in.
Like, it was remarkable. Against Brisbane, I made note of it. The only attacker that was consistent when they were chasing the game, they needed to win. Emma Checker, when she got thrown up front, was the only player showing for ball to feet and actually wanted the ball played to feet in that Brisbane Roar game that they ended up losing when she was thrown forward in the last 10, 15 minutes. I'm just sitting there thinking, Emma Checker should not be the only attacker that actually wants the ball to feet at Melbourne City. Now, admittedly, Hannah Wilkinson wasn't there at that point, but Wilkinson's a different type of attacker to that. So I think Melbourne City are going to push Sydney FC. I think Melbourne City are actually going to definitely going to make Sydney FC earn it. And if Courtney Vine can't get up for Sydney FC, it becomes a lot harder and it becomes a lot more of a toss-up. But based on what I've seen from them, based on Vine playing, I think Sydney gets up, and I'll
I think
revisit.
it's still pretty tight with Vine.
I think it's. I don't think they're going to hammer them. I think Sydney win. I think Sydney win. I think it's very tight if Vine's not there. I think it's slightly less tight if Vine's there, but I think Sydney win. I think City beat Adelaide in the rematch the week after, and then we get another Sydney in the grand final.
Yeah, I think we see Sydney in the final as well.
And then I think the final has the potential to be different because I think Rado and Dario and that City staff spends basically the best part of every waking minute trying to figure out how to beat Sydney FC, and I wouldn't be surprised if they figure out a way.
I think we bullied Joey too much. He changed the way he said staff. Went for the long A. Oh, dear. I'm so sorry. Debano, you wanted to jump in?
I told you. I've shown you all, haven't I?
Apparently, I misread Debano's body language. He doesn't want to jump in.
No. I just told you in the chat. I took a big breath. I didn't say I was in.
Okay. I thought you were winding up.
No.
We winding up? Are we doing predictions?
We should wind up. Quickly, I am producing a podcast for Alex Chidiak, if people want to listen to it. It's called The Other Side of 90. It's about how football can be a positive thing in the world and in people's lives. And there's some inspiring stories and interviews on there. So if you want to subscribe to The Other Side of 90, it is available where all good podcasts are.
I have another shameless plug. I have another shameless plug, but it's an actually good one. Shameless plug, Canteen's clinical trials fundraising campaign is still ongoing. We are still trying to raise money so that we can get another clinical trial up off the ground, specifically designed to provide better access to clinical trials for young people with cancer here in Australia. That is just my wholesome plug. That campaign is still going. I actually have I spoke to Channel 7 News about that in the week. We'll post that story on the TNC socials. There should be a link in that where you can go to donate. So please get around that because the football community was so amazing in rallying around me and supporting me, but it shouldn't require your old man writing for the Melbourne papers to get people to rally around you and get access to a clinical trial. Every young person deserves the right to live and get access to clinical trials.
I also have a shameless plug. I will have another Socceroo scouting report out this week.
Who is it?
That remains a surprise.
You guys,
can I ask?
I will just say it will not be a midfielder this time. I'm glad to just not do it.
So, did they play in the greatest league in the world, Ante?
So they are.
No.
Ooh.
They do not play in the high NL. However, actually, speaking of midfielders in the high NL, we'll be watching Anthony Cullick in 1 hour and 45 minutes. Goodits playing. Anyway, soccer scouting report out this week. Don't sleep.
Debano.
Just quickly on that, do we get a Socceroo squad this week? Because the game is in a couple of weeks' time. So maybe by the time we're back around next week, we may be talking, about the squad. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a bit of a chatter about someone.
Let it go.
I just got to say, as an update.
Take your victory lap. Take that victory lap.
Yeah. No, honestly. Okay. As I alluded to,
But you are so obsessed with this.
Hang on. I shouldn't have to be. I said this the other day. I was talking to Lockie about this yesterday. It shouldn't have to be this way, but it's become this. Unfortunately for Christian Volpato, he was dropped full stop yesterday. Wasn't even in the squad for Roma's game against Atalanta. Roma won again. They've now, I think, gone 6 games unbeaten. So just saying the chances of him playing, unfortunately for him, diminishing. But if I'm going to take the victory lap in this sense in terms of the entire dialogue I've had about this, I said the next few weeks were going to be vital if he was going to keep playing, and he hasn't. And now it'll be curious to see whether he gets selected based off the half an hour that he played in that game against Hellas Verona. And it will say a lot if he gets selected. It will say a lot if he does.
Just to piss you off, I hope he gets selected.
You know what, Stoll? I don't know what I'll do if it happens.
Joey, I
I'll
wish
go on
you put
Twitter,
on
I'll
the
be like,
banner
"Great
cap
selection."
him hashtag. Like,
Yeah.
Ooh, if only I could rip the video quickly enough. I was gonna prepare the Mean Girls Regina George clip. You know, why are you
doesn't
so
go
obsessed
here.
with me?
Yeah. No. But look, if you get some minutes, great. But I'm just saying, I told everyone, park it, watch the next 2 weeks, and the next 2 weeks, unfortunately, yielded no minutes. So I'll leave it.
yeah.
Let
Cap
it go.
Volpato, start Pasalic Gasparini, you fucking terrorist, man.
All right, we're calling
Anyway.
it a night.
What's up? Hey, Milan
It
Napoli
is-
tomorrow. Make sure you're up,
Call
fellas.
it a pass
Biggest
tonight.
game of the
We
year,
gotta
guys.
go.
Milan Napoli, man.
Più forte, attaccare.
Attaccare!
All
Più
right,
forte!
I'm turning this broadcast off because we're
Yes.
approaching the 2-hour mark and it's not
Hold
getting
on,
any
no.
better.
We were promised a long run up from Josh
Nah.
Parish.
Shut it.
Ah,
Who cares?
Ooh.
It's the same.
Nah,
old
nah, it
shit.
can wait.
Same old shit. It can
Yeah.
wait. It
Come
can
on,
wait for
Josh.
next week.
Come on.
You know,
30
I'll-
seconds. 30 seconds.
Maybe
gonna
I'll
do
try
predictions?
clearing my cache and it might fix it magically. You know. Yeah. Look, it's just that I continually get frustrated with the platform that this league is broadcast on, and you know, if you can't show a pre-rendered, you know, highlights video in viewable quality, and you don't have a settings cog to change it on your web version, then there's not enough work has gone into this website. So it's no wonder that the league is withering and dying when you've got a broadcaster who's letting it happen. But I think that's enough for tonight. I'm gonna sign off here on the national curriculum. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Debano. Thank you, Ante, and thank you, hungover Nick Stoll. We will see you again next week.
Under 2.5.